Session 7, project implementation, adaptive management, and impact evaluation. So this is where as we say in English, the rubber meets the road. Okay, so today we have Annalise Keys, who you've heard from a couple times. Again, she's the operations director of PlantVillage and the current and emerging threats to crops innovation lab. Her background is in agricultural and biological engineering with a focus on food and bioprocesses and international agriculture. We also have Dr. Ramona Serge Wadrago. We call him Serge. He's the associate director of the lab, and his background is in plant pathology and rural development. And we have Dr. Ari Sanders from Zamorano University in Honduras. He's the local PI, and he's the associate dean of the postgraduate program at Zamorano University in Honduras, and he has a degree in developmental economics from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. Welcome.
Yes, hello everyone. So today, before continuing on the program project implementation, I will talk a little bit about the project design that we covered yesterday, and say which the different elements you need to keep in mind when you go to design your objectives and write your proposal. So first is the identification of the research topic. So, and for that, you will have the funding agency goals that you need to take care of, because you will have the RFA or the NOFOD where you will see the details, what the funding agency need as want to target, the goals that the funding agency want to target. And also, if you apply from your different countries or the different institutions, you have some national goals. It's good to make these national goals or the national objective that the government objective to meet the funding agency goals, also giving you some really important points that you want to address and show the importance. With that, if you already work in university or a research agency or maybe an NGO, you can support the importance of what you want to address with your personal data, your day-to-day field work, what type of issue you found that you can use to support to show the importance, and also the literature. It can be a scientific literature, but here I would like to highlight, you can use, nowadays we have a lot of things coming from social media. If you have the farmers that are addressing the issues through the farmers Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups, and you have data you can use to show the importance of the question you want to address, please use them. Or also, you can have some press release, national press release. You can use them also, because if it's a new issue you want to address, maybe you don't have some scientific paper that already addressing that. Maybe some other countries addressing it with scientific papers, but you can use those national data to show the importance of the issue you want to address through your proposal. And go for showing the results, impact, the technology adaptation, how adoption, how it's going to change the life of the smallholder farmers, the gender issues, you want to use your project to solve some gender issues, and the return of investment. And you can highlight all you're addressing the issue, how you can contribute to solve these issues that people are encountered on the ground. And sometimes you can also show, if it's like a technique, some type of issue you want to solve, and maybe to have farmers diffuse a different technology, maybe it's going to contribute to some employment issues, create job for the youth. You can address all those in your applications as well. And the technical feasibility, and if you have the human capital, don't propose something that you know basically you don't have some human capital to address those. If you have some facilities, equipment to address all these different issues you're proposing. And avoid also reinventing the wheels. If people already address the issue, maybe you can tackle it in another way by strengthening the different proposition people already made in the ground in your country, or maybe in some other countries. Maybe you can import some solution in your country and study how you can adapt this solution to your local context. And from there, now you can define the objectives you want to address and suggest some different alternatives, identify the problem, and develop your different objectives. So I just want to brief that before continuing, and when you have how you can implement your project. So next. For the project implementation, when you are awarded and how you can go through. So first, you need to keep in mind you can have some delays. And the delays, like for instance, if you want to start the project, your grant, you write it and you want to start it in, let's say, in September or August. And you need to keep in mind that maybe some delays can happen. Maybe by the time you will really start the activities, it may be in, if you propose a starting date, August, maybe it's going to be in December or maybe November. So you need to keep that in mind and have a discussion with the funding institution, because the delay can come in both ways. It can come from your local institution. It can come also from the funding institution. So it depends on where the issue will come from, that you need to keep in mind, but that some issues can happen. And from that, you need to review your accepted proposal. You already did a proposal, so, but you need to review it to adapt it. If you write the grant today, by the time they're going to accord you the fund, maybe 5 months or 7 months. So maybe the context a little bit changed. So you need to adapt the, review the accepted proposal and have some discussion with your funding agency to see how you can adapt some goals, some objectives. And with the funding agency, you can just try to adapt different things. And from then, now you meet the different collaborators, people that you say you're going to work with. You need to start meeting them. And with their different collaborators, adapt your objectives and your activities. And continuing by having a global strategic plan, that's how you're going to say, okay, we plan previously to start in August, but we're technically starting in November. So how we're going to have our strategic plan and break down the different project objectives and the timeline. And also, and from there, you're going to design your objective and key results. Analysts going to come through that and give a better explanation how you can break down your activities and adapt it to have a strategic plan. And continue by planning the activities by meeting your collaborators regularly. The meetings are really important. And like that's the third time I'm coming with the meetings, because that's how you're going to tune your goals with your collaborators. You need to really have, be in the same level of understanding the issues. And more you meet, more you're going to solve the issues, because issues will come. But if you meet regularly, instead of holding on the issue for like 1 month, by meeting regularly, you're going to solve it as soon as possible. And nowadays, we really have some different platforms like the Zoom, WhatsApp, and a different platform that can enable the communication more often with your different collaborators. Even if you are not living in the same time zone, you can find a way to really communicate efficiently with the platforms that we have now. And creating some working groups. We use a lot Basecamp, but we have some other platform also you can use, like Telegram or WhatsApp. You can find a way, depending to your fundings, what you have as fundings, to have a working platform to work with your different collaborators. I know Basecamp, you need to pay some fee, but sometimes check with the service providers. Maybe they have a specific fees for your country, if you are in the developing countries, or if you are a research organization or an education organization, you won't pay the same price like someone who using the same platform for like for a business. So every time check with them and write them a letter and say, okay, I'm from a developing country. If you can give me a specific plan, maybe they can give it for free for some time of your project plan, but keep checking with them and bugging them to see if they cannot make a specific deal for you, and use whatever you can use to have some really good way to get some good prices with them. You can have some Google Drive to share your different data. I know with Google Drive, if you don't reach you don't reach a certain level, you will have it for free. So maybe you can use it for free by downloading your data and storing it somewhere just to keep the free services. But find a way to share your different activity with each other. It's really important to have things move quickly and have the problem solved when the issues come. And you need also to address during your meeting to have role and responsibilities and do the hiring process. If you need to hire some new people that are going to come and work with you. Previously, we were talking about the capacities. If you don't have enough capacities to address the issues, maybe you need to hire. And during this planning activity, you need to start hiring people that are going to come and help you to address these issues and work on your different projects. And for last is the execution. And the meetings will still continue. During your execution, you need to keep meeting and having people updating the different activities. And in that way, even when you will have to write a report, it's going to come really easily because you already have some you're meeting each other regularly, so you know where people are. And if you have to write a report, it's going to come really easily. But if you don't keep meeting, maybe your team that is on the ground finding some issues that even you don't know. So coming back with the meetings also is really good. You maybe have to meet 15 minutes every week, but keep some regular meetings to address the issues. And also the data management, we're going to cover it with the other session, but the execution will you need some data management, follow up with the OKRs again. That's during the meeting, you will follow with the OKRs and have the impact evaluation with the OKRs plan also. So I will leave the next to Annalise to continue with the OKRs. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Serge, for those visual representations and flows of how to incorporate different aspects into project design and implementation. And I think that flows nicely into what I'll talk about today, which is objectives and key results, and specifically how you can incorporate OKRs, not just from the beginning of your project, but all the way back to the proposal, design and implementation then. And so for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll talk about the concept and definitions of OKRs, and then go through an example of measuring your key results and how to focus in on the different perspectives you can take there, and then wrap up by describing and talking about how we can turn your proposal or project into an OKR. And so if there's any questions along the way, please put them in the chat or Q&A. There are many people on this panel and also in the audience who can answer about OKRs. And if there's any remaining questions afterwards, you can visit the topic page or send me an email. And so for this slide, we're going to talk about just the concept and definitions. So I think I've mentioned previously and have alluded to this part of the session before, but an objective is the goal you're looking to achieve. Key results are the metrics in how you will achieve your goal. And so I've written out an example here that we'll go through in a moment. And I want to hone in and focus on our objectives first. So there's two different types of goals you can set when it comes to objectives. You can have a commitment style goal and also an achievable style goal. And so a commitment goal or commitment objective is focused on being achievable. It's project focused, and you either achieve it or you do not achieve it. So it's something that you typically have to get done related to the project. And so one example of a commitment style objective could be to learn one new language. And then you would define how you achieve that learning of one new language through your key results. But now an aspirational objective is more like a moonshot goal. It's a big, audacious plan that you want to, or goal that you want to achieve sometime in the future. And so an example of this could be to learn 5 new languages. And again, you would measure that on your key results. So you can see how having a commitment style is more focused around the activities and goals that just need to get accomplished. So an example, again, for that could be for the Innovation Lab, one example was to hold a kickoff meeting. That was our one objective. We had to have it done. and how we achieved that was through our key results. But then a more aspirational goal for our larger group could be to just implement the innovation lab over 5 years. It's a very aspirational goal. There are many other groups who have done it previously in different ways, and so we get to take those learnings and understandings and apply it to our lab as well. And so to dive in a little bit more on key results, they are our tools on how we're going to measure the progress towards achieving the objective. They need to be specific and measurable. They're typically measured by quantifiable metrics. So this could be a date, a time, a percentage, an amount. And when you focus on, this is where we're going to dive into focusing on how you measure a key result specifically and how that could be important to your overall goals and objectives. And so for today, I've made an example objective and key result structure for us. The objective is for the audience to understand the concept of OKRs. That's my objective that I aim to achieve through these next 5 minutes. My first, how I'm going to measure if I achieve this objective or not, is for my first key result, I believe 100% of the audience should be able to define what objectives and key results are. The second key result should be focused on having 10 members of the audience distinguishing between aspirational and commitment style objectives. And then my third key result is by the end of my presentation, so in about 5 minutes, the audience can identify a measurable and specific key result. And so the idea here is if I achieve key results 1, 2, and 3, then my objective 1 will have been successful and complete. So we'll take a moment to dive in on what I've talked and mentioned earlier about measuring your key results and what you focus on. And specifically, I'm going to hone in on key result 2. But first, we'll look at key result 1 is measured by a percentage, so that's specific and measurable. Key result 2 is measured by an amount, so that's specific and measurable. And key result 3 is measured by a time, which is also specific and measurable. But when we look more closely at key result 2 and dive into what does this metric mean? What does it mean for 10 members of the audience to distinguish between aspirational and commitment style objectives? I'm going to take 2 time chunks from this event today. 5 minutes into the event when we started and at the beginning of this session. So 5 minutes into this webinar, there were 54 participants. If 10 out of 54 participants can distinguish between aspirational and commitment style objectives, then approximately 20% of the audience will be able to achieve that. And that's quite a large impact, which is great. That's what we want to have, is a large impact. But if I take the time chunk looking at this from when this session started, we had approximately 189 participants. If 10 out of 189 participants can distinguish between aspirational and commitment style objectives, that's only 5.3% of the audience. And so when I take a step back from this analysis, as I'm generating my key results, to me, it says I could be focusing on something better. I could reword or measure this key result in a different way that would actually enhance and improve my overall quality of achieving the objective. And so after evaluating these 2 different situations and looking at the difference of impact, it tells me that even though key result 2, as it is now, is specific and measurable, it is not being measured in the best possible way. And so because it's not being measured correctly and that it likely isn't worded in a way to enhance my overall goal and objective, I would actually alter the key result to say, let's achieve 20% impact on the audience to distinguish between aspirational and commitment style objectives. And so that's an important example of why after creating your key results to achieve your objective, you want to take a step back and think about them over time and think about the different situations and analysis you can do to help improve what you're measuring. And so can we go to the next slide, please? So I just wanted to put this in here to give an example of what OKRs look like and the formatting for it, because as I had on the slide before, I just had written it out in a very document style format, which you can also do. However, we use Google Sheets to track our OKRs. And so you can see we keep track of what quarter it is, the year it is, the start to end dates. And then you have your objectives in that blue row bar with white text, and then our key results that fall underneath it. And then we have different columns for your team, owners. And so the distinction there is your team is the group of people who are working on that key result in general, but your owner is the one who is responsible for leading the progress and updating the status of your key result. So if I needed to reach out for an update on key result 1, I would reach out to the owner of that key result. And then you have our 3 metric columns. So you have the metric start, which is where you started at on that key result. And then your metric current, which is where you are now. And so OKRs are typically implemented throughout a period of time. This can be in a quarterly, biannually, or annually basis. And so you update the current as per each update you give. And then you have your goal that you're trying to achieve, which is what you rate your current against as you continue to go through the quarter. And then you have a status column, which is where you provide a written status update. And then when you go through in your OKR meetings, you'll verbally read out the status update as well and provide any more context and information. Some teams will ask, what is the importance of having a written status if you also are giving a verbal status update? And the importance is to be inclusive here. So the written status update has 2 key components. One, you get to keep track of the history of what activities are implemented on that key result. This can come in handy when you're writing reports for the donor institution, or when you experience a challenge or obstacle that you need to overcome. You can keep track of the different methods you try, what worked, what didn't work, and then also report on that. And then the other importance of a written update is that when you come to the OKR meetings as a group, then if you are unable to make it, if the owner is unable to make it due to poor network or maybe a power blackout, then anyone on the team is able to also give that update by reading through the status. And this template is provided on the PlantVillage topic page under OKR, so please feel free to go and copy and paste it into your own sheets to use. And I will just add that there are many existing softwares that provide the OKR format. Some you can pay for, some are free. Like I said, you can also use this template that we provide. We appreciate using Google Sheets in our group because it can work offline. It can be shared to everyone who needs access to it, and you don't need a new software or app to utilize it. And then the other benefit is that someone else can give your update or write your status update in case you've lost power or network, which can happen frequently depending on the areas you're working in. Next slide, please. And so just briefly then, I'll wrap up this section by talking about how you can implement OKRs into your project. And this will go into, really implementing it from the beginning, from that project design aspect that Serge had talked about. And so in the initial phases of your project, you want to ensure that, as we talked about before, with having a time scale for frequency and a timeline in general, you want to design that timeline for when you're going to have your not only OKR meetings, but also your changes in the quarter. So we use a quarterly basis at the Innovation Lab, but you can also do bi-monthly. You can do an annual basis, which is where you set your overall goals and key results for the project. It's purely up to your team and how your project is designed. And then you also want to translate your deliverables and activities from the project proposal into objectives and key results and assign ownership at this stage. And then After you get through the initial phases of designing your OKR and creating them, you'll go into the monitoring and tracking of progress, which will occur throughout the life of the project. And so you have your week, we run on a weekly meeting basis. You can run on a bi-weekly, but the meetings for OKRs are short, typically less than 30 minutes, because the idea is you show up to the meeting, you run through all your objectives, key results with a status update from each of the owners. And if there's any blockages or challenges, you can decide to extend the meeting length at that time or to set another meeting in the near future with only the people who are necessary to uncover those blockages. And so those meetings will continue throughout the life of the project. You'll continue to report on your OKRs. And then at the very end of your OKRs, whether it's at the different change points for your objectives and key results. So we report and evaluate on a quarterly basis and also at the end of the year. So we report on a quarterly and an annual basis for all of our OKRs. And when you evaluate and report, you want to rate your progress of the overall key result and how it improved the objective or how you achieved the objective. Share the learnings that you had along the way, and then reflect on how this key result and objective impacted your organization, impacted your progress, and the community surrounded to you. And then also your next steps to move forward either into the next quarter or the next project. And then, so that's an end of term reflection. At the end of project, you do the same type of evaluation, but just for the whole project view. So you'll look across all of your OKRs that were created for the project, rate the progress, state your learnings, and then reflect. And I believe now Ari will go into how to translate this from proposal to what happens on the ground. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our experience with the project. My name is Ari Sanders, and I'm working at an agriculture university in Honduras, which is Central America. And during the last 25 years, our university has been involved in project implementations. We write our proposals or our local partners for large multilateral or bilateral projects. So we have projects with USAID, European Union, Swiss Cooperation, and other international NGOs. And a couple of my colleagues at this moment are working with FDF Innovation Labs, including Innovation Lab at UC Davis on horticulture and Innovation Lab of University of Kansas for the reduction of post-harvest losses. This is the first time I'm working with an innovation lab. I've been a local PI for the UC Davis Horticulture Lab to establish a design lab for our students. And I was also a local PI for the Women Agriculture Network project implemented by the Penn State University in finance for UC Davis. Being successful in conducting projects depends mainly on your project design, project team, and your relationship with local counterparts. But, there's a big but, the flexibility of your donor or prime is also crucial to achieving your project goals. Look to the first slide. This is very typical for projects. When you write your proposal and make your budget, you rely on your former experience in the review of former project documents or journal articles. Your approach is usually theory-driven. In the case of the current and emerging Trees to Crops Innovation Lab, the original idea of our proposal was to promote the use of Nuru by small-scale farmers in the dry corridor of Honduras. So in our scope of work, we established as the main objective the promotion of Nuru by using the farm field school approach. We are working in the West Honduras with small potato farmers. It's a very important crop. There's a lot of challenges. We have been working for more than 5 years in the area, and we have a good and large relationship with local organizations. Most of them are producer organizations and have been part of farming projects, including with some applied researchers and undergraduate students on the production of potatoes. However, after receiving the good news from Penn State about this lab, we had several meetings with Penn State on the Nuru applications. And from the Penn State and the Dream Team of Kenya, we have learned about the ins and outs of Nuru. And we are convinced of Samorano that Nuru has enormous potential to become an effective decision-making tool for small farmers. But as you can see in the second slide, next slide, please. We had several assumptions about the context and the newer applications. For example, we expect a lot of challenges regarding internet access. However, the access to internet in Western Honduras is larger than we thought, including a lot of our farmers already use smartphones, especially the kids. However, there's also an issue, a very interesting issue, that most of them use Chinese brands because they're cheap and relatively good. So Noor is not available for them because there are Chinese smartphones. So that will be a challenge for the near future, the massification of Noodle. And also we saw that late and early blight is a big challenge in Honduras. We are focusing on the early and late blight potato production. But in discussion with farmers and technicians in the area, we became aware of many other problems in potato production, including the control of diseases such as Paratriosa. Another interesting aspect what we found is that farmers don't monitor the potato for early and late blight. So by default, they are spraying their crops every 4 days, independent of the existence of the blight. In some way, they don't need Nuru because they use preventive spraying. So we have also introduced to the farmers a different way of working to manage late or early blight in the potato production. Also, new experience in controlling late and early blight is based on the context of Kenya. So there's some important difference in the management of early and late blight in Honduras. For example, the application of chemicals to control early and late blight are very different. In discussion with our colleagues from the International Potato Center in Peru and the Penn State team, we decided to introduce some change in our scope of work. It was necessary to set up some field experience to understand better the management of early and late blight in Honduras. And it was also required to nurture Nuru with additional photos to detect early and late blight in the case of Honduras and to get more information about the use of pesticides. In a certain way, our project approach is similar, but we added additional work, the field experience, implying a shift in our costs. A large part of our original budget was assigned to buy cell phones, which was not necessary. And at this moment, we are adjusting the budget so that Penn State can approve our new approach. What has been essential for us until now has been the open discussion every week with Penn State team about our challenges in the fields, which makes it relatively easy to come up with alternatives or changes to assure that we accomplish our overall goal, the introduction and promotion of Nuru as an instrument for decision-making for small-scale farms in Honduras, Guatemala, and Haiti. This latter has been very important for us, despite we have been working on many projects, including in the same area, including with the same organizations. The reality is always different, which makes adaptive management so important to become a successful project. And already explained by Serge and analysts, the weekly meeting with Penn State has been crucial for us to adapt the project and the scope of work almost every 2 weeks in the beginning when you start your project. And I think at this moment we have more or less our OKRs ready, and now we are a little bit more adapted to the reality of West Honduras. And it was especially important to become successful. And as mentioned by all the former speakers, the communication with the prime or your donor organizations, and that your donor or your prime understand what's going on in the field because they have also the experience in the field, maybe in other countries, make it very easy to work on this project, adapt the project, and trying to be becoming successful. Thank you. Oh, that was the last slide I forgot to mention. So you can see in the last slide, we were trying to starting by testing Nuru and then to scale up Nuru. But at this moment, we're working on the first block. We're doing field experiments and trying to make Nuru more cleverer and update Nuru for the context of Honduras, Guatemala, and Haiti. So that we added a totally new approach, components in the project before because based on our experience in this moment. And at the end, if you talk about timely execution of implementation of the project, we almost added 1 year additional to our activities. So it's we try to be efficient and doing all things on time, but sometimes the reality is very different. And this we added this block, the field experience, in direct communication with Penn State. Okay, this is what I have.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. We have a few questions. We don't have a lot of time for questions because we have to start the next session in about 4 minutes. But as always, if we don't get to your question, we will answer them later, and we will post the Q&A document in the Google Drive and then also on the PlantVillage website later. So don't worry if we don't get to your question right now. So there's a question on project delays. We have projects that are affected by weather seasons that can be affected severely in case of implementation delays, so agricultural projects. How do you mitigate those?
Yeah, that's very common with agriculture related projects because you have some factors that mostly with the climate change, we have different issues. So by meeting with your donors or your collaborators, you can really find some adjustments. And with the approval, you can postpone some activities, like for the next season, for instance, if you already passed the season, because some data you need to collect them at the beginning of the season or at some time of the season. So for this data you couldn't collect because the time is past, you can postpone them to the next season or readapt some activities. And when you talk with your different collaborators, you can find some adjustment that will work better for everyone. So are we bringing back the meetings again because it's a really nice way to readapt quickly. And if some issues is happening during the week, if some agricultural issues, you need to solve them in less than 2 weeks. So when you meet regularly, you will find a way to readapt your activities really quick. So, but sometimes postponing or changing the way you will collect the data is a really nice way to solve this type of issue, but it's really happening regularly. And more often, the funders or the donors won't find any won't stop you to readapt things or postpone some activities. That's what I will say.
Yeah, for example, at this moment we are doing the field experiments and we couldn't find the right potato seeds. And this will cause a delay in our field experiments. So we now, in discussion with the Center of International Potato in Lima, we are just changing now the kind of seeds we're going to use. I mean, yeah, sometimes it will be time delay, and sometimes you have just to change the design because agriculture is very, how can I say it? There's a lot of uncertain things, so it makes it very difficult sometimes to accomplish everything you want to accomplish.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, this is for Annalise. You mentioned both Basecamp and Asana as tools to help your project management. Do you use them both for different functions in the same projects? And if so, how?
Great, thank you, Denise. So yes, we at the Innovation Lab use Basecamp. We do not use Asana. That was just, I've been providing that as a reference because they have a really good platform to link not only to their own project management tools, but also to others as well. And also the content in their blogs and general information is just very excellent for understanding more and becoming an expert on project management. So with Basecamp, it's more of a communication platform, and for us as an innovation lab, it allows us to connect with all of our collaborators in one space, but also have specific information set aside for others. So we can pull in all of our subawardees into that space through different projects that we create and upload information, documentation. So we upload all of our awardee information, compliances, and even OKRs get uploaded. And we can have informal chats or more of a broadcast message style if there's some important information we need to get out to all of our projects and subawardees at the same time. And then it also allows for direct tagging of people, so you can be very accountable and assign ownership to the different tasks that are coming up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I know there's been a discussion about different project management tools in the Q&A and probably in the chat as well. So thank you very much for that insight. So we are going to move on to our final session for today. And if I could ask the speakers to please, if there's any questions that you can answer in the chat or the Q&A, please go ahead and do so. And I would like to thank Ari and Serge and Annalise for their presentation.